All right, we're going to continue our series on the legacy, leaving a legacy. We're talking about, the legacy of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and we're to Jacob now, and we're going to learn a little bit of Jacob's story, and I'll dedicate this one to the seniors because I think there's some very important things here for you as you take this next step in life. Before I go, maybe to the seniors, I'll just leave you with one thing to sort of think about. You may think so from time to time, but you never outgrow God. And one of the things that happens now in our culture, just in our culture, is people leave their high school years and they go to college, and that's the number one time when people, what's the right word? Abandon, drift, wander from their faith. I could do a survey and I could say, how many of this happened to you? And it would be hands everywhere. And then it was like they wander and then they kind of drift back. But you don't ever have to wander away. And Jacob is a great story because we learn about a guy that needed to grow up a bit. He was, if you remember the story from last time, he was a swindler. His name meant deceiver. He was the heel grabber, and it was a figure of speech. If you were grabbing at someone's heel, you were like a conniver or a deceiver. That's what his name meant. Later, it's changed, as we'll see, to Israel, one who struggles with God. And we'll get to this, but the thing you need to know is that the thing that you're always struggling with, who here has struggles in life? Everybody struggles. You struggle. And what you think you're struggling with is, I'm struggling with the way people are treating me. I'm struggling with why this is happening to me. I'm struggling with why the world is, why those people are. Anybody have struggles? And here's the thing that you should think about. What you're really struggling with is not those people or this. What you're struggling with is God. And it takes Jacob to get all the way to the end of near the end of his life, much into his adult life, to realize who he's been wrestling with all along. You're wrestling, and you may not care to name God, God. If you avoid that, it doesn't change the fact that you will wrestle, because this is someone put you here. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to go to sleep at night. Eventually you go to yourself, what am I doing here? Why am I here? Why did he put me here? What is it all about? That's the ultimate wrestling. And we get sidetracked with all these other little things, but that's actually the question that everybody's asking. And so Jacob has two major, I'll call them God moments in his life. And we're going to see about his dream. He's going to have this dream where he sort of encounters God. I pray and hope that you have this, and it can remember some experience in your life where you encountered God, you met God. Now, they're very different, and they're usually not in a vision or audible voices, but they're no less real and no less impacting when you understand that life is bigger than you. But before we get to the dream, we got to tell you a little story, and the story is good. It's a good story. Isaac, the father's getting up in age, and he can't see well anymore. And so you remember last week we talked about how Jacob had already kind of swindled his brother Esau out of his birthright. But he takes it to a new low. Isaac was old and his eyes were weak and he could no longer see. He called for Esau, his older son, and said, now I'm an old man, and the day of my death is near. Go out and hunt some game for me. We'll have a meal, and I will give you my blessing. So it's the older son. He was only older by a few minutes. They were twins, you remember? And so the tradition was that the dad would bless him. But Rebekah's listening. You know, the tent walls are thin. You might know what I'm talking about? Yesterday we were setting up a tent in the backyard. Charlie and I, and she was on the inside, and she would say, "Dad, I can tell you're over here." You know, I can hear you. You're in this corner. There's not much, you know. And the tents were a little sturdier back then, no doubt. But Rebekah could hear this, and Rebekah's favorite was Jacob. And so Esau goes out to hunt. Rebekah runs in to grab Jacob and says, quick, we got to make a meal. Otherwise, your dad's going to give the blessing to Esau. I mean, can you believe what a messed up family? Anybody with me? How many feel better about your family already? This is the founding of Israel. Mom's in there conniving, they're making some meal, and dad wants some wild game, but they figure if they do the spices right, and he's kind of old, and he's losing it anyway. But the problem was, Esau was, remember last week, he was hairy. That was a big thing, hairy. All kinds of hair everywhere. And Jacob was like, how he was terrified. He's like, no, Mom, if I take him that meal, he's going to know that I'm not Esau, and he's going to throw me a curse instead of a blessing. And she goes, don't worry about it. And she gets some skins of an animal with hair on them, and she tapes them to his hands. And I mean, is this conniving or what? And so sort of, you know, trembling, he walks in there with, you know, hair, and he puts Esau's clothes on so he smells more like Esau. The dad can't see good, so he's only got a few things left going, right? And he figures if the touch is like Esau and the smell is more like Esau, he can pull it off. And he goes in there a little bit trembling. He went into his father and he said, my father. Yes, my son. Jacob said, I am Esau, your firstborn. I've done as you told me, sit up and eat, and so you can give me your blessing. And Isaac says, how did you find it so quickly? Good question, Dad. You're going out hunting. You know, you can't just go out in the backyard and grab a chicken. It's going to take you a little bit. And, you know, Jacob thinking quickly, he says, well, you know, the Lord gave me success. How many of you have ever kind of used the Lord's name in vain? Plays the God card quick. Anybody ever played the God card on you? Well, the Lord told me. Like, I always feel like saying, well, he didn't tell me. Well, God gave me success, so here I am with the meal. Then Isaac said, come here, come close so I can touch you. How many can just smell the trembling in Jacob, the fear? It's like, I hope these stick-ons work that Mom made. Comes up there to hold the meal, and I want to touch you. So Jacob goes close, and Isaac touched him. And Isaac said, the voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esau. And so he blessed him. He said, bring me some of your game so I can eat. And he brought it to him, and he ate. Then his father said, come here, my son. And he went to him and he kissed him. And Isaac caught the smell of his clothes. He must have been convinced. And then he gave his blessing. And he said, may God give you of heaven's dew and of earth's riches, an abundance of grain and wine. May nations serve you and be Lord over your brothers. That was the one he wanted. And after Isaac finished blessing him, he had scarcely left his father's presence. Like Jacob just got out of there quickly, and then what? Other side of the tent, here comes Esau. How many know it's about to get juicy? So he walks in. Esau has now got the wild game, and he comes in and he brings it. And he says, my father, sit up and eat some of my game so you can give me your blessing. Father says, who are you? I'm your son, your firstborn, Esau. He recognized his voice. Isaac trembled violently. Who was it then that hunted game you brought to me? I ate, and before you came, I blessed him. And indeed, he will be blessed. When Esau heard his father's words, he burst out in a bitter cry. Bless me too, my father. But he said, your brother came and deceitfully took your blessing. Jacob's got a deceit problem. Now, let me just say something. This can help you relax in life. God can get you where you need to go. I mean, that's kind of simple, but God can get you where you need to go. So you don't need to swindle anybody. You don't need to take it from anybody. You just need to keep in step with God. God can get you where you, what? Need to go. And God will get you where he wants you to go. All you got to do is listen and obey and follow. But if you're setting your own path, well, then that's where the cheating and the swindling and all that. But God will get you where you need to go. And this is what Jacob had to learn. Oh, Esau is furious. And he vows from that day to kill his brother. His brother had taken from him. Now Jacob is in trouble. And he's about to have his first real encounter with God. You know when we're usually the most open to God? You know when we're usually the most open to God? When we're in a lot of trouble. Everything's good, and the money's flowing, and everything's going, and everybody loves you, and it's the greatest. You'll get around to God. I'll come see you. I'll see you around Easter. You know? Are you with me? But when things start breaking down and things start falling apart and things aren't coming together, all of a sudden there's a new openness. So something happens, and basically the mom's conniving. She's like, I gotta get him out of here. And she goes into Isaac. She goes, Isaac, he can't marry a woman from around here. You got to send him back to the homeland and to get a wife from there. And Isaac agrees that he should get a wife from there because Esau, his wife was a thorn in the family side. And they didn't want another one like that. So he gives him his blessing to go back and get his wife from the homeland. And as he's traveling, he leaves and the sun sets and Jacob lays down and he puts his head on a rock for a pillow. How many know you're tired when you can use a rock for a pillow? And he lay down to sleep, and then he had a dream. And in the dream, he saw a stairway reaching from the earth all the way to heaven, and the angels ascending and descending. I mean, could you imagine this? You got this terror. Your brother's going to kill you. There's probably nothing going to stop him. And he's on the run, and he's taking off, and he goes to sleep. And he has his God moment, his dream. This dream is essential. And his dream becomes a kind of a cornerstone for his life. And this is what I pray for everybody, that you have some sort of experience that opens your eyes to this one simple fact. Ready? There is a God, and you're not him. Now, there's a lot of people today, they say, I don't believe in God. But really what they've said is, I will be God. They were, maybe they're not that arrogant, they wouldn't use those terms. But who else is the boss? Who else is the ultimate decider? Who is it? And what Jacob does is he has his dream, and God comes to him because he's finally ready to hear it. Here's the kicker. Here's the kicker. You can't hear anything until you're ready to hear it. In Proverbs, it says there's a timely word. timely word. Think back. You were young, you were growing up. Who here remembers your parents or grandparents or an aunt or somebody, your pastor, trying to tell you something and you are not listening? I'm not ready to hear it. But when your life's on the line, all of a sudden you're kind of open to new ideas. And this is the way of human nature. It's like when you think you have it all figured out, no one can tell you anything. You already know. And so Jacob was doing it his own way until it wasn't working, And you being God in your own life, it may seem like it's going to work for a while until then one day it doesn't work. And it says there, he says he had a dream. And you see, God, you need something in your life. You need something in your life that's bigger than you, much bigger than you. And one of the reasons that we're having so many problems, and you can share this with your classmates, but it's true. One of the reasons that we're having so many problems is because we've reduced the idea of God, we've rejected the idea of God, or we've brought God down to our level. And instead of understanding that we need someone bigger than us, above us, transcendent, that gives you something to live for. And when you take away the something to live for, then what do you have left? Just kind of like a little money contest. If you read in Ecclesiastes, there's some of the other proverbs, it's just, eat, drink, and be merry. What's that mean? It basically means have as much fun as you can because you're going to die soon anyway. That's really all there is to it. Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. But if there is no God, that's kind of why not? But if there's more, then what you understand is that you're here for a purpose and that this God has put you here, and your life should be about pursuing that purpose. And this dream gave his life purpose and meaning. And the problem is we're taking away purpose. You need purpose as much as you need air. Ask people that lose their sense of purpose in life. He goes on and it says, there stood the Lord and he said, I am the God of your father Abraham and the God of Isaac, and I'm going to give you all of this. So you have purpose, and then you have promise. And if you put these two things together, I promised to Abraham, I promised this to Isaac, now I'm promising this to you. God has a promise for your life. That's a big deal, because when God gives his word to you on something, then he's going to fulfill it. And it gives you unbelievable confidence when you walk through life and you know, I am here by God's purpose and I'm here by God's promise. I don't need this person's approval. I don't need that person's approval. Why do I'm here in God's purpose and what? God's promise. But you take all these things away, and now you have all these people searching and wondering and flailing around, trying to find a sense of purpose and meaning to their life. I remember there's this little, I don't know if it was a tradition, I don't know what, but in the church where I went in high school, when I first started following Christ, they would always say things like this. They would say, Chris, God has his hand on your life. You know? I mean, I spent a lot of time at church. So just for whatever that's worth, I just did. And if you spend a lot of time, then people get to know you. And then you get to know other people, and then you become part of a family. And they would pray for me and say things to me. They have little fellowships and dinners, just all kinds of things, just like all churches do. But they would say, Chris, God has his hand on your life. And it stuck. It was as if they were trying to get me to connect that if you stay connected to this, you'll understand that God's going to guide you. He's going to guide you through life. And he has a promise for you. What if you believed deep down that what you're here for God, from God's design, and that God has a promise for you, and it's continuing the legacy. Here it is, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Was it perfection? No. It wasn't perfection. It was purpose. And the problem is a lot of times what people think of is when they think of church or God, they think about like perfection. You know, they want you to never make a mistake. No, it's not about that you won't make a mistake. You are going to make a lot of mistakes. Let's just get that one out there. But what you need is a direction to pursue. Anybody here ever struggle, like I do? I kind of have a theory about this, but I struggle sometimes with option overload. Do you know what option overload is? Like, it's when you go to a certain store and it's like, well, you could get this. You know, it started for me at Bldg's Bagels back in the day. It's like, well, you got to pick the kind of bagel you want it to go on. And there's 700 kinds. You know, does anybody know what I'm talking about? And it's a little stressful. And like, I might make the wrong choice. And then after a while, you think, well, I got to get the crazy kind of bagel. And then I got to get do you want it toasted or roasted or whipped or this? And then you got to there's 1,000 kinds of cream cheese to put. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? And after a while, I'm like, just a bagel and cream cheese. Just, you know, stressful. Think about it. There's a million different ways you could go. And I think one of the things that happens is people have a lot of stress in their life because they have like option overload. I could do this, I should do this, I might go here, I might go there. Here's the thing, when you've had the dream, when you've had the connection to God, you just say, I'm just going to follow God. The details will follow. When God called Abraham, he's like, just go to this land, I'll give you the details when we get there. It's very freeing. All these guys all got kind of pressure. You know, they graduate. What are you going to do? I got to have this very detailed plan. Truth is, you can read stats, about 80% of the guys that go to college, if you choose to go to college, they don't do what they major in. Waste of time. Not waste of time, but it's part of the journey, right? You're doing this, but do you know? You don't know. You have no idea. I mean, if 1 out of 5 get that right, too young to know, but what you can know is I'm following God. And he's going to take me on a path, and all of a sudden he's going to go, why don't you just veer off this exit here? Let's go on this little journey. Let's follow this one. But see, if God is guiding you, if God is leading you, then you can relax because I realize God's taking me somewhere. And this was a key moment for Jacob where he had to take his hands off the wheel a little bit and say, this is a part of something that's much bigger than you. And then he says to him, you're going to bless all the peoples of the earth. So God's going to bless you, and you're going to be a blessing. And the whole point of this is what we talk about all the time. The whole point of your life is not for you to collect and to consume. The whole point of your life is to be a vehicle for God's love and light and goodness to come to you and shine through you, to be a blessing to the world. Everywhere you go, people should be better because you were around them. You'll be a blessing. And so Jacob goes, this is an awesome place. And he says this, God was here, and I didn't know it. I wasn't aware of it. This is key. God's with you when you're aware of it, and God's with you when you are not aware of it. Sometimes you're aware, and people talk about, I'm so close to God. And I always tell you, you're close to God whether they realize it or not. He's right next to you. Sometimes you're aware of it. That's when you feel close or are close to God. Those are Christian terms. I'm close here, come on. And people say, oh, I went to this retreat and I got so close to God. And I'm like, no, what you did is you went to a retreat and you opened your eyes. And you realized that God was right next to you the whole time. Because it says his eyes were open. This is true. This week, Charlie decided she wanted to learn to ride a two-wheeler. I think she saw like a YouTube commercial or something. And because I told her like a week before, hey, this is the summer, we can ride your two-wheeler. You can take the training wheels off. No, Dad, no, I don't want to do that. Sure enough, some YouTube commercial changed her mind or something. I don't know. And there's a towel. I guess I'm supposed to use a towel to wrap around her. And this is like a death wish for a dad. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? I got a towel over here. I have a bad back right here. She's going down the thing. She has no clue what she's doing, just leaning over like, this is great, Dad. This is great. My back. And Mom's a lot of help. She's just going, faster, Charlie, go faster, go faster. So, and then all of a sudden she swerves and the bike comes in front of my feet. Like, what could go wrong? We go tumbling, and I'm holding on to her, and I'm just doing the best that I can to help her fall with as much grace as possible. Thankfully, it wasn't a total skid out, you know what I mean? And I lobbed her into the grass, and he goes, that's okay, Dad, I'm not hurt. Here's the thing. God's right there whether you know he's there or not. Holding you up, man. You're wobbling sometimes. And it's true. She's out there. She's learning to ride it. She just started riding to. Dad, look at the birds. Look at the birds. Where's the wheel going when you're looking at the birds? We need to look ahead, Charlie. How many know God's right there, whether you're aware or whether you're not aware? He's holding on to you. That's what he does. This dream was all about awareness. It wasn't about all of a sudden God showed up there. It was God was with him every step of the way. But let's be honest, who here has ever felt like, I ain't seen God in a long time? Sometimes he's right there, out of view. Huh? Like this. Sometimes you're just leaning over there, having a good time. He's keeping you up. Sometimes you're not paying attention. He's keeping you up. The funny thing about God is he doesn't really need that much credit. But we do really good when we acknowledge him. Do you get what I'm saying? He doesn't need the credit, but we do really good when we acknowledge him. So let's finish the story. And so Jacob made a vow saying, if God will be with me and will watch over me on this journey I am taking, a way of saying this would be like, since God is with me, watching over me, on the journey that I'm taking through life, since God's providing for me, he says, then, verse 22, the stone that I have set up as a pillar, he takes that stone that was his pillow, he makes the pillow into a pillar, he stands it up. This is going to mark a spot. This is going to mark something. Markers are good because we're human. How many know God's everywhere, but this was a special moment because this is when he realized, when he became aware. That's why we do things like baptism. We have these things that can mark out the stages of your journey because when you become aware, then you mark it and it's special. And he poured oil on it and then listen to this, and he says, I set up as a pillar. He said, then, verse 21, then the Lord will be my God. The Lord will be my God. This was his moment. This was his God moment. Question. May seem so simple and so basic, but this is the question. Who will be your God? That's everything. Who will be your God? If you still like being your own God, God will let that happen. There's a verse in the scripture that says, choose this day who you will serve. Go for it. See where it gets you. And then this is curious. He says, and of all that you give me, I will give you a tenth. That's how it ends. What's this about? He says, God's going to take care of me. He's going to provide for me. He's going to guide me. And I'm going to give him a tenth. And so it's somehow in Jacob's world, if he got 100 sheep, he was going to give God 10. But that's where we get the word tithe from, actually. What it means is a tenth. There was like some correlation. Now, as we're going to see in the scripture, God doesn't need anything, but it's as if we need to recognize him. And that in their mind, in Jacob's mind, it's like there has to be a connection. I can't just say, you're my God, and make sure you take care of me. There needed to be a recognition that God's the one that got me here. God's the one that brought me here. God's the one that did this for me. So when I get 100, I'm going to give him 10. Now, right away, like if you're a math person, you go, well, man, if I kept 100%, that'd be much better for me. The quick math. That's if God had nothing to do with getting it to you in the first place. Are you with me? What's 90% of nothing? What's 100% of nothing? If you got nothing, it don't matter what percentage you have. You got nothing. How many would rather have 90% of something than 100% of nothing? Then you got the message. But you just have to make the decision, does God have anything to do with it? That's a good decision. That's a good question. Does God have anything to do with it? We live in a world where it's all me. Whatever I got, I did, and it's all mine. That's a way of looking at it. Not the one I recommend, but it's a way of looking at it. But this was just natural. He's like, that's the first thing. No one asked him to do it. He just, that's how they did it. It was a recognition that I'm a part of God's plan. God's the one that got me here. You will find many times in your life moments where you realize God stepped in. God took care of you. God provided. God opened a door. God gave you a job. God did this. God spared your life. You're here on God's grace. And that's what the 10th was about. Now, we don't have time. But maybe next week we'll do the other part of Jacob's story because sometimes what happens is people have one God moment like this, and then it doesn't take or doesn't go anywhere. And so what I've seen is there's another story in Jacob's life, and I think it's a story that's in all of our lives too, where he has to wrestle with God. And if you don't wrestle with God, it's like you're delaying the inevitable. Like, all of my questions, all of my doubts, all of my concerns, I got to get it out there. We got to have this, me and God got to have this conversation. That's okay. Sometimes some people grew up in a church where you don't ask God any questions. You don't ask God any questions. You don't ask your pastor any questions. Just do what you're told. Do you know Israel means wrestle with God? You're going to have to wrestle. When you start to have questions, then that means you're starting to you doubt it. But if you doubt it, that's okay, because if it's true and if it's legit, it can stand. You just got to keep wrestling. The wrestling. Your life, right? Your life is in God's hands, and you have to get to the point. You have to get to the point where you are comfortable wrestling with God. And part of the maturing of our life is we feel like, I'm never supposed to ask that question. I'm never supposed to doubt this. And what it does is it stunts our growth. It keeps us immature Christians or immature followers. And when you start to ask questions, then your growth can really take off. So what we'll do is we'll pick up next week. But let me close with this. Have you made the decision to make the Lord your God? Have you just made that decision? Have you had that revelation yet? You know, that's the key thing. The dream, his eyes were open. It was always there. It was always there. But his eyes were finally open. Wow, this is an awesome place. God was here. I didn't even know it. I didn't know it.